12 News Now at 5:30.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell providing new insight about the threat that the Omicron variant could pose to the economy, plus how long he thinks inflation could last. I'm Mallory Rivera in Washington with the details coming up.
Plus, the state agency is responding to a lawsuit over the use of facial recognition technology. It claims it never even planned on using it in the first place.
Well, just a few flurries and sprinkles along the South Shore. Otherwise, it's a mainly dry evening. Your forecast coming up.
We begin at 5:30 with a look at the economic impacts of the Omicron variant discovery. Good evening. I'm Kim Kalunian.
I'm Mike Montecalvo. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying to lawmakers about what this could mean for the country's economic recovery.
12 News correspondent Madeline Rivera joins us now from Washington with the very latest.
As Americans shell out more money for items like food and gas, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell now says inflation isn't transitory.
I think it's probably a good time to retire that word and try to explain more clearly what we mean.
Powell expects inflation to last into the middle of next year, adding the Fed is ready to step in to try and cool the economy if needed.
But at this point, the economy is very strong and inflationary pressures are high, and it is therefore appropriate, in my view, to consider wrapping up the taper of our asset purchases perhaps a few months sooner.
Stocks fell on Tuesday over growing concerns about the threat the Omicron variant could wage on the economy, especially on the supply chain and labor market. Some warning the variant could discourage people from going back to work, while others say there's no need to panic.
We have to learn to live with this virus, not overreact to every new variant that comes down the pipe.
The White House getting ready to release a strategy that could include widespread vaccinations, boosters, and testing, a plan some health experts agree with.
What I think is going to happen is that our vaccines are going to provide protection. People should go out and get boosted.
Powell says the Fed is expected to discuss more tools to curb inflation during its December meeting, at which point they'll be able to better assess the effects of the Omicron variant. In Washington, Mallory Rivera, 12 News.
A New Bedford man who slashed his girlfriend with a knife is sentenced to 3 years in prison. The Bristol County District Attorney's Office says back in August of 2018, Rolando Ibarra woke up the victim and forced his way into her Highland Street apartment. Victim died in December of last year from a drug overdose. However, DNA and the victim's 911 call were allowed to be used as evidence if the case went to trial. Ibarra pleaded guilty to assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. He'll serve his sentence at a state prison. DA Thomas Quinn says in a statement, quote, "I am pleased the defendant was held accountable for his violent assault against the victim, despite the fact that she passed away prior to the trial."
New at 5:30, a Scituate man who admits to sharing sexually explicit images of underage girls has now pleaded guilty to child pornography charges. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, 54-year-old David Duquette sent at least 2 images to undercover Homeland Security agents who were posing as the mother and father of a 13-year-old girl. During his arrest in April of 2019, agents found roughly 1,400 images of child porn on Duquette's cell phone. He's scheduled to be sentenced in March.
Taking a live look here out on 195. This is by Route 114 in East Providence. As you can see, traffic is slower westbound heading into the city. Chief Meteorologist Tony Petrarca joins us now. Pretty nice night to head home.
It's not bad. Some extra clouds, a couple of flurries along the South Shore, Mike, but it's mainly dry. So that travel weather looking good. You're expecting someone home from the evening commute. Weather's not too much of a factor as far as slowing things down. Now, granted, on Doppler, you do see some precipitation, of which most of it is offshore and very light, but right along the coastline, including New Bedford, just flurries and sprinkles and really nothing more than that. A little small system passing through that will head offshore shortly, and we'll see clouds clearing out later in the evening and during the overnight. So notice in New Bedford, if you look closely, you get a couple of drops, some sprinkles on the camera lens, but otherwise it's fairly light and insignificant. Temperatures now in the low to mid 30s, including 37 in Providence. And while it will get below freezing tonight, not quite as frigid as last night and early this morning. Any flurries and sprinkles ending with gradual clearing towards daybreak, 6 a.m., upper 20s to low 30s. 7-day forecast, it's all coming up in a little bit.
Tony, thank you. With the supply chain rattled these days, we wanted to take a closer look at something specific. Is your prescription medication something you should be worried about? 12 News consumer reporter Gina Marini spoke with the FDA and a local pharmacy and joins us now live in studio with what she's learned. Gina?
Prescription drug shortages can happen, but a couple of local pharmacies tell me they're largely avoiding the shortages. According to the FDA, it receives information from manufacturers about their ability to stock the market. And while the FDA's website lists 110 drug shortages on Tuesday, a spokesperson says, quote, "We are actively monitoring drug availability and we are committed to working with our public health partners, manufacturers, and distributors to help mitigate shortages." There are several reasons for a lack of supply, including quality problems, discontinuation, manufacturing, and delays, according to the federal agency.
I think when there was like a hurricane that hit, I think it was Puerto Rico, there was a big shortage on like IV supply bags.
Matt Oliver owns Matt's local pharmacy. He tells me when the pandemic hit last year, he ordered a bunch of medications anticipating a shortage.
Throughout this whole COVID situation, there's been little to no changes in the drug supply chain that we've seen, so we haven't had any issues on acquiring the medications that we typically use every day.
According to the president of CVS Health, the company has been able to, quote, "utilize our expertise and extensive partnerships throughout the supply chain to ensure the continued availability of prescription medications since the onset of the pandemic." An FDA 2020 drug shortage report to Congress shows, as a result of federal actions, manufacturers are notifying the federal agency earlier about shortages and interruptions. According to the report, this gives the FDA extra time to work with manufacturers on ways to prevent shortages. Data from the American Society of Health System Pharmacists shows last year there were 129 national drug shortages. And the FDA spokesperson also says you can call a pharmacy ahead of time to check medication availability and suggest talking with your doctor about medication alternatives. Live in studio, Gina Marini, 12 News.
Gina, thank you. New at 5:30, the ACLU of Rhode Island is suing the Department of Labor and Training over the potential use of facial recognition, but the department denies even considering using the technology. ACLU associate Hannah Stern submitted a public records request for information from the DLT in response to reports of other states using the technology to process unemployment claims. But DLT Director Matt Weldon responded in a statement saying, quote, "The department does not and has no plans to use facial recognition technology for any of our programs." He goes on to say, quote, "We apologize for any confusion we caused and look forward to a quick resolution in the courts."
Opening statements today in the trial of actor Jussie Smollett. The special prosecutor in the case says an attack against Smollett on a Chicago street in 2019 was staged and that Smollett is the one behind it. But Smollett's brother spoke about that outside of the courtroom.
I just want to express that it has been incredibly painful as his family to watch someone you love be accused of something they did not do. All right? We're confident in his legal team, and we look forward to people hearing the actual facts in this case. We love him. We're here to support him, all of us, and to lift him up.
A defense attorney says the two men who Smollett allegedly paid to attack him are liars. Those men are brothers and are scheduled to testify. Coming up next on 12 News Now at 5:30, strong winds send a chunk of building flying, landing on a mother and her child below.
So when it happened, handspring, layout.
It was a play that we were going to run the quarterback sneak anyway.
Plus the story of a local football player who's also a dancer. We sit down with Joey Acciardo and his dad, the coach, after a video of him backflipping during a game goes viral.